Come on down to the Law Student Lounge with your host, attorney Ryan McKeen, where law students like you tell their stories. So pull up a chair and join us in the lounge.
Hi, everyone. It's Ryan McKeen, and I'm here with Carla Ochoa, and I am so thrilled about this episode. I have worked with Carla for over 2 years. She is amazing. You're going to find her amazing. And this episode is different from the other episodes we've done because Carla is in the process of applying to law school. So we're going to have a story arc over this podcast, which is law school applicant, law student, and law school grad with Carla. So good morning, Carla, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Carla, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I came to the U.S. when I was 10 years old, so 20 years ago, from Argentina. And I did not speak any English or know anyone really here except for a little bit of family. So I've been here for 20 years and I learned the language. And then I went on to a high school. I actually went to an IB high school here. And then I went to college and got my sociology degree.
And how did you get into the legal space?
So before getting my sociology degree, I got a paralegal certificate. My associates in paralegal studies. And then I said to myself, I always knew law school was the end plan for me. And I wanted to go, I figured, okay, paralegal, then I go and get an associate, a bachelor's, and then I'm ready for law school. But of course, life does not happen in a linear way. So then I was like, okay, well, I already have my paralegal degree. Let me get my feet wet. Let me start into the law firm world this way. And that's how it happened.
So can you tell me about getting your paralegal certificate and a little bit of background about your about being a paralegal? Because I know when I went to law school, there were several paralegals in my class. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of law students out there who may be listening or paralegals out there who are listening, thinking about going to law school. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I've been working mainly in personal injury for the past 10 years. And I can tell you that I've seen just about every type of lawyer, the lawyer that's at the office from dusk to dawn and the lawyer who comes in, gets their work done and is out the door, and everything in between. And working with certain people has really inspired me. In particular, now at the Connecticut Trial Firm, I work with attorney Andrew Garza, and he has been very inspiring to me. And he's what almost, I would say, rekindled that fire within me to go to law school. And it was actually a trial that we had. Not many people know this. We had the Cruz trial, which was huge. And right after that win, where we were all crying, you and me included, I tell one of our coworkers, I said, it's moments like this that make me feel like maybe law school is worth it. And apparently Andrew overheard that conversation because on my birthday, a few days later, he texted me and said he thought I would make an amazing lawyer and that if that's what I wanted to do, I had his full support. And that meant the world to me because in previous jobs, I felt like I had to hide the fact that I wanted to go to law school because there's this thought that lawyers don't want to lose their paralegals. And if they think they're not going to be focused on the job, then, job security is not there. So that meant the world to me. And that's really what started me looking at this more seriously for once and for all.
So, yeah, I also think you will be a fantastic attorney. You have everything that it takes and more to do that. So that is awesome. And I'm glad that working here has helped inspire you to continue down your career path. So can you talk a little bit about, your experiences, particularly, as a paralegal that have, inspired you or like informed your decision to go to law school, or about, knowing what the work is like. Because look, when I went to law school, like many law students, I had no idea what a lawyer did. Like I had no idea I'd never been to a courtroom. The first time I was in court was my first day of orientation in law school. So you're definitely coming at it from like a different perspective. And can you just shed a little light on that for us?
Of course. So essentially I look at it in two parts. One is the client contact, what we can do for the clients, right? Because it's very client focused, especially personal injury. And the other side is everything that goes on behind the walls, all the litigation, all the motions, all of those things that the clients may not necessarily know about, but that I find incredibly interesting. And it's specifically cases that we do here that are sort of like what I see myself doing in the future. And being a paralegal has given me a chance to be like, okay, this is the real life of a lawyer. It's not like in Suits, the show. It's not Harvey Specter being a closer. It's coming in, and some days it's writing motions for 8 hours. Some days is fighting in court. And then other days is being able to deliver the best news to your clients and seeing how grateful they are and seeing the difference that you made. So having a front row seat as a paralegal to all of that has been instrumental in my decision of deciding to go to law school, because I know that A, I can do the work, I can handle the emotions and the stress that come with it, and C, I know that I can and I want to deliver those results to clients.
Can you, can you talk a little bit about your background, your childhood growing up and coming here and, not knowing English and I am so inspired by anybody who does that. Like that to me, Carla, is just such an act of bravery and just requires so much. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you think that kind of experience will help you in law school or shape your experience as a lawyer?
Sure. So I came here, as I said, when I was 10. I had an older brother and sister, and I came with my parents as well. In Argentina, right in 2001, when we left, there was a major economic downfall, and people were losing their savings from the bank. There was literally a new currency introduced into the country because the current money was worthless and they didn't know how to keep the country afloat. So it was a big mess. So we were more or less running away from the violence that was developing there in the recent years and the economy that was completely shattered. So we came here, and I was lucky enough that, my mother believed education was the number one priority of everything. So she always pushed me. She pushed me to learn English. She pushed me to apply to, the IB high school that I ended up going to, magnet schools. She used to always tell me, I don't care if we have to eat boiled rice every day, you're going to go to college. So my family was always very oriented on education. So coming here at such a young age and having to learn all of that, I definitely think I have a great respect for immigrants because I was one, but also because I saw my parents, because I am part of the immigrant community. And I see how hard they work, and I see how sometimes they are not able to access all the resources that communities have because of lack of knowledge. So those kinds of things really inspired me, and I think are going to make me a better lawyer because I want to work with those communities. I've done volunteer work specifically with the Spanish-speaking community, and I find that it's a niche that could use more legal representation, especially in their own language, so that they feel more comfortable. So I definitely think it's shaped my goals for the future as a lawyer.
Yeah, and that is so important. And it's such, what you touched upon is really like the notion for me of justice. And I only speak English. I can butcher the Spanish language. But the ability to connect with somebody in their own language. And as you know, like we're in the Hartford, Connecticut area, and we have a large Puerto Rican population, but a lot of them are bilingual, but they may feel a lot more comfortable having something explained in their native language. Or when I've worked with different communities, like I worked with a Vietnamese community here in East Hartford, always having to work through a translator, both as a lawyer and I think probably as a client, you're always worried. Are they conveying what it is that I'm trying to say, even if they're taking the words literally? Look, as a lawyer, basically, everybody who you represent in almost any context, like unless you're doing I don't know, like lottery winner law or something. Like they're anxious. Like it is a nerve-wracking procedure. Like people don't come to us on their best days, whether they're going through a divorce or their business is in litigation or they've been hurt in some which way. Like all of those things are extremely anxiety producing. And I think, as a lawyer, you're always hoping that you can connect. And look, over the years, I've represented a number of people who's bilingual, speak Spanish only. But it's always a concern. And so I think that lawyers who are able to offer that it's just incredibly valuable. And even on you touched a little bit about on the Cruz case. One of the things that look, our team did an amazing job. Our team did completely amazing work. And I've always thought, and I talked to Andrew about this, that like it would have been even better if we had a Spanish speaking lawyer, even though our clients spoke English, who could maybe help connect with it on a different way with our clients, help explain things culturally, maybe differently than we would have understood them. And look, like it all worked out. But I think that if you're out there and you are in Carla's position and you're an immigrant or you're bilingual or you're from a traditionally underrepresented community who is seeking to become lawyers, like that is a superpower. Lean into it. Like the profession absolutely needs more of you, because it's incredibly valuable. So those experiences are going to shape you. I mean, like, do you have an idea of when you get out of law school, what kind of law you want to do?
I do have an idea. I will say this, I'm keeping my mind open. I do know that, I might run into things in law school that open my eyes. And I'm like, wow, I never knew this even existed or that I would enjoy it. So I am keeping an open mind. However, I think that I am leaning towards personal injury with an eye specifically towards sex abuse cases, sex abuse victims. Some of that work that we have been doing at the Connecticut Trial Firm with people who identify this way has been life-changing for me. It's very inspiring. It's honestly very rewarding, and I am very interested in that. Another very similar, in the line, but an eye towards possibly immigration, but specifically related to like refugees, victims of trafficking. I know that what I want to do is within the community of people who unfortunately have ran into these events in life and had things happen to them. And I find it incredibly inspiring because I look at these people and how they beat the odds and how they went through some of the worst possible things and are fighting for themselves and are trying to get justice. And I want to be part of that. I want to help them get that justice. And so I think that that's definitely the center of what I want to do. But like I said, I'm keeping my mind open because I know that sometimes you run into things you didn't even know existed out there. And that's some of the advice I'm getting from a lot of law students that, they ended up going into a particular class or participating in a particular clinic and found that they loved it.
Yeah, I mean, life has a way of setting you on your journey. And I think it's really important, to go into law school and exactly have an open mind. And look, there are definitely some people who I went to law school with and they're like, I want to be a public defender. That's what I want to do. And that's what they did. And they're happy with it. But I'm going to say that is like the exception, because the one question that every law student hates is like, well, what do you want to do when you get out? And my basic response when I was a law student was like, well, I want to be able to repay my student loans and not be homeless. Like I'm willing to work, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to put in some time, and I'm willing to find myself along the way. And even when I started as a lawyer, like I had a general practice. So I would do criminal defense or personal injury and divorce or wills or business or probate. Like my day was constantly varied. Housing, civil litigation, corporate litigation, all sorts of different things. But which is fine. Like try the different flavors of ice cream, like that are in the 30, like in Baskin Robbins. And pay attention, I think, to what it is that energizes you, where it is that you're like, I'm excited to work on this case. You know what? I'm dreading going to work today because I have to do a real estate closing, and that's not what I want to do. And I think if you're a law student and you're out there, like, don't be afraid to gain experience doing things that maybe you didn't think you would like. I know for me, one of my great experiences in law school was working in a prosecutor's office here in Meriden, Connecticut. I never wanted to be a state's attorney, but I got to go into court. I got to see what happened, and I actually got to make lifelong friends working in that courthouse. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So keeping an open mind is, I think, critical. And I also think you touched on something, Carla, that's really going to make for a rewarding legal career for you. I think the happiest lawyers that I know are what I consider like mission or purpose-driven lawyers, right? Like, look, there are lawyers out there and they want it as a job. They want the money. They want whatever. And like that is fine. Like, there's no shame in working hard and getting paid and a paycheck. But the absolute happiest lawyers are the ones who are like, I'm driven to help people who are wrongfully accused. I'm driven to help people who are hurt and fighting against insurance companies. I'm driven to help a couple get through a divorce in a way that preserves their family and doesn't hurt their kids. Or I want to be a prosecutor, and I stand for, people who are victims of crimes. And so, like, understand, like, if you go to law school and you're passionate about things, like, don't listen to that, use that, lean into that. Because I ultimately think it makes for a happier career as a lawyer. The most unhappy people are people who they don't know what they want to do. They take a job, they get a paycheck, they grind away, and there's no real purpose to what it is that they're doing. So, Carla, I think you're going to start ahead, of many of your classmates in that way, just knowing you. Change the subject a little bit. I know you are studying for the LSAT, and that is occupying a large space in your life. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've been doing, what has worked for you? Because if you're a law student, or if you're thinking about going to law school, becoming a law student, you have to take the LSAT. I think you still do. But can you talk about your process with the LSAT?
Sure. So before I dove into really studying, I took 2 months to sort of taste test and looked at different online sources out there. I looked at a couple different books. I took a few classes with different teachers that promote themselves on the social media groups for LSAT students, and really try to hone in on what works for me. Whose methods do I feel most comfortable in? Is paper better for me? Are online courses better for me? What is my thing? And I ended up deciding that paper was not my friend. I felt like I get a dopamine hit from hitting the right answer and seeing that it was right. And I'm like, yes. So getting the paper was just not doing that for me. So I switched over to trying honestly the most popular LSAT companies out there. And I tried them all, let me tell you. I tried 3 different LSAT companies. I tried resources from a couple different single tutors, you could say, that have courses. And then I worked with tutors. So I really have done a wide variety of things. And I will say what has worked best for me is using an online software an online subscription to drill. With the concept of drilling is like you do questions, you check your score. So that has been better for me than paper and books, 100%. Online classes I found to be really helpful. And then when I finally started raising my score, something people don't usually know is I did take the LSAT back in 2017. And I had taken one of those like Kaplan courses that you paid like $1,200 for. And I had no idea what I was doing when I walked into test day. They had gone over concepts, but I had never tried an actual problem out myself. So I went in, and right off the bat, I walked out with a 145. And I was like, wow, this is it. I suck at this. This is not for me. And I literally put in the back burner until recently. And I took another cold exam, and I got in the low 150s. And now I'm finally in the 160s, with some better days than others. But it's really been a combination of figuring out where I can improve, figuring out what works for me. And in this sense, it was doing the online drilling and the online programs. And then I worked with a tutor. I worked with a tutor when I needed a little extra help. I think I did like 3 or 4 sessions in like logical reasoning. And I got to a place where my standard score is -4 in logical reasoning, which is pretty good. I've been working most recently with a tutor for logic games, and I'm in a place where, again, I'm scoring very good, almost perfect. So, it's taken a lot. It hasn't been linear. Nothing in my life seems to be linear. It definitely wasn't like, oh, I opened these books and they got me there. It's not like that for me, at least. But I will say that if you put in the time and you try to figure out what works for you, you'll get something out of it. I will also say, do not believe the online stuff to say that 3 months is enough. 3 months is not enough. I've been studying for 6 months, and I'm counting my exam in August as almost as a sample, as a pretest, because I think that the October one is going to be more realistic representation of my score, because I'm going to have 2 additional months to study. And you gave me great advice, Ryan. You said, why take the test sooner if you can give yourself more time to practice it? And because of you, I pushed my test from June to August. Now I'm wishing I had pushed it to October to begin with. But at this point, I'm also, part of me feels like I just have to do it, and I have to just face it. And I did hear this one thing in one of the prep companies. They said, do not fear the test. And that's something that I see a lot. Students fear the test. I know I fear the test. And I'm trying to face it. So I'm going into August and saying, if at the very least I'm facing my fear and taking that as my win, even if I'm not getting to my goal score just yet.
So a lot to unpack there, Carla. First of all, can you tell us what testing program is the one that worked for you? Because I know there's when I went, there was only like Kaplan, and you had to go in person, you had to do all these things. And now there's the world is your oyster. So, and I know you are a very high information person. You're a person who likes to research, and so you're very thoughtful in your process. Would you be able to share who it is that's worked for you? And again, I understand anybody listening, what works for Carla may not work for them, but Carla is a high information person.
Of course. LSAT Demon has worked for me. I love their drilling feature. I love their live classes. I don't love their price. I would say second in line for me would be LSAT Lab. Especially if you're a beginner, I recommend LSAT Lab over the Demon, because they have very structured, read this, do this, then take this class, then do this. So they're very structured. So if you're someone who thrives on structure, I would highly recommend LSAT Lab. And there is a guy out there that if you're part of the LSAT community, you might know. I would also highly suggest joining the LSAT Facebook groups. There's a lot of information on there. And this guy is called Brad Barbe, and he has his own program that he developed with videos. He doesn't have an online platform, which is the only reason why he didn't work for me personally. But I will say his videos on the fundamentals. So if you're someone who doesn't want to do LSAT Lab, for example, but you want to do the Demon, I would use Brad's videos, which are very affordable. I think they're like $30 for all the videos on any specific section, and use Brad for all the fundamentals. Essentially, I would just say, make sure you get the fundamentals in, because I did that mistake of jumping right into the Demon, not having my fundamentals, and kind of working backwards. And I think that definitely cost me something.
Now, thank you so much, Carla. I mean, anybody listening, I would take Carla's advice if I were studying for the LSAT, knowing her. Now, there's a lot of Facebook groups out there. And look, I've been part of various Facebook communities, and one of the things that can happen is people can get hysterical. It could raise anxiety. It could be counterproductive, or people are saying, I got this and I got this. And confusing information because you have people who are trying to go through something. And again, there's like Baskin Robbins, there's like a million different flavors of people. So what Facebook communities have you found that are like the most supportive?
So I can tell you specifically the one that I literally check out every single day. It's called LSAT Prep Test Study Group. And that one has a wide range of anywhere from people posting about their particular experiences, people seeking advice, and then a few of the what I would call the main tutors or advocates in the industry, like Brad. And then there's a few others who have podcasts and different things. And what I love about this community is that people really do chime in. And sometimes people will literally post a question like, guys, I can't figure out why test 45, question 23 in logical reasoning is E and not C. And you will literally have people come together and try to help this person really explain it for free. And just because they're trying to be helpful. And you also find a lot of those like free sample classes that I mentioned so that you can later decide if that is a tutor or a program that would work for you. So that one has really, really worked for me. It's also a great place to find study buddies. I found a study buddy that has really motivated me in the final stretch to study every day. And sometimes I'm like, I really don't want to do this section. And he's like, I know, but that's why you have to do it. And we push each other. So I would say that being part of that community is crucial. At least it has been for me. And that is one of the Facebook groups that I would recommend.
Thank you, Carla. And so anybody listening there, check out those groups and say hi to Carla if you see her there. Give her a thumbs up, support her.
Feel free to reach out if there's any questions that I can answer for you about this process. I know a lot of people don't know where to start. My sister recently decided she might want to do this, so I've been guiding her a little bit into where to start. So feel free to reach out if that's something you would like some help with.
You had said something, Carla, that I was thinking about, which is that it's about facing your fear. And look, the LSAT has nothing to do with the practice of law. It has nothing to do with being a lawyer. Like, I promise you never go before a judge and the judge says, okay, Ronnie can go eat lunch at noon and he can only have bacon and cheese. And Linda can only have ham and Swiss and she has to eat between 1 and 3. Like, that is never the practice of law. Like, that is never. But what is the practice of law is having to face your fear. And having to perform under immense pressure with consequence. Look, when we're trying a case or we're making an argument, like, that's our client's future. I mean, like, that is, maybe the difference between them getting a house or not getting a house, or getting medical care or not getting medical care. Like, it's no small thing. Or if you're doing divorce, maybe it's a difference between them having a relationship with their kids or not. And so there's always those things. And I think as a lawyer, like, it's such a useful muscle because you are perpetually going to face this, which is that you have to do something and you have to face your fear, whether it's your first argument, your first court appearance, your first client meeting, the first time you write a brief, the first time you advise a client, because look, somebody is going to say, Carla, what should I do? I have this major life issue. What do I do? And you have to have an answer. It can't just be like, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. Like, it has to be like, here's the best course of action and here's why. And in order to do that, in order to get there as a lawyer, you have to do your homework, you have to be prepared, you have to know the law, you have to know things in and out, you have to push, learn, study, constantly grow, constantly challenge yourself. And you also have to face the fear that the jury gives you $0, the fear that the judge makes a ruling that's not in your favor, the fear that the client fires you. And, I think that is a very useful muscle. And look, it's a forever thing. Like, I go through this on a daily basis on a different level, in our firm. But, if you're taking the bar exam, it's going to be the same thing. The first time you do your examinations in law school, it's going to be the same thing. So as you're doing this process, like, take some time to learn about yourself, to think about yourself, to understand how you operate on those conditions, to understand what allows you to be optimal, like how you sleep, how you handle the stress, how you engage, disengage, what energizes you, because that can be a huge, important part of your growth as a lawyer and in this profession. So don't, use that on the LSAT. The other thing I sort of have to say is for anybody else, for anybody out there taking the LSAT or thinking about it, like one stop on your, like on a long journey, it is not something like you will think about 20 years from now, or probably 5 years from now, really. It obviously matters significantly in terms of what schools you can get into and what money you can get for those schools. Obviously a big deal in both regards. But, if you're out there, like, your life does not depend on this test. Your career does not depend on this test. It's not, obviously give it your best, but I think for anybody out there, like, there are things that matter so much more. Your drive, your persistence, your willingness to deal with setback, your willingness to accept challenges, more than your ability to discern logic games.
Agreed. I think that there's a lot. And I hear this from you, and I hear this from other lawyers in the firm, and they're all telling me, like, yes, do well on the LSAT, but I promise if you don't do well, it's not the end. And that's very it's very nice to hear. It's like I said, the tests can be scary, so it's nice to know that regardless, there's a possibility out there for me.
And and to that end, like, look, I sit at our firm, and I've been a lawyer for 18 years, and truthfully, even when you talk about going to law school, I don't even know what law school all of our lawyers went to. If you ask me, like, I don't know where Ranks went. I think he went somewhere in New Hampshire. Okay.
Did, yes.
But it's not actually, like, even like where you go to law school is not even, no practicing lawyer asks the other lawyer, like, where did you go to law school? It's all like, what is the quality of your brief? Like, what is the quality of your character? What are your legal arguments? I don't know where Liz went to law school. Like, Delaware? I don't know. And it just, and again, I'm in a position to hire lawyers. Like, I don't know where everybody went to law school. So, in the scope of your career, I'm just trying to give you, like, a broader perspective, which is like, it, look, I was first generation to go to law school. Everything felt like life or death. The LSAT, the bar exam, the first exam, everything felt like an immense amount of pressure because I didn't have the, like, perspective. So in the scope of things, like, it's important, but put it in its place out there. And maybe that gives somebody out there some comfort, maybe not. But people just don't, it ultimately in your career, a lot of other things matter a lot more.
That's good to know, because sometimes it can seem like this test is going to define me. So thank you for that advice.
It will not define anybody out there. I mean, look, if your whole thing is you want to be a Supreme Court justice, like, okay, so you want to be the one in a trillion lawyers, like, okay, like, you better get the highest score, you better get into Yale, and you better, whatever. But for the rest of us, I don't think it defines anybody. And I know great lawyers from every law school, every background, and it has a lot more to do with their diligence, their willingness to work, their willingness to learn, just who they are as people. Because there's, like, a lot of, like, smart enough in the world. Like, you're smart enough. So, if you're out there, just have some perspective on that. And I'm trying to offer that to you, not as a, like, hey, put your feet up and don't take the LSAT seriously, but rather to put it, I think, in its proper context. So you are not only taking the LSAT, you are thinking of applying to law school. And what is it in 2023? Like, what is that feel like of applying to law schools?
So it's a little bit, it's a lot of research and a little bit of anxiety. For example, the first thing you have to do, is come up with your school list. So nowadays, even if you're not looking to move, you have so many options because of hybrid programs and online degrees. So before, someone like me could only have 3 options, right? So, like, the 3 schools I could commute to because I'm not willing to move away. Nowadays, I have literally 20 options because of so many hybrid programs. So you have to, look at these lists. Where do you want to go? What can those programs offer you? And also, realistically, where could you get in based on your stats? So, it's a lot of research in that end. And that was been a big part of, like, I think I have 8 schools on my list right now. But that's not even set in stone. Like, I'm willing to take another hard look at it. And then now everything is done through the LSAC now. So the registration, all the way from registering for the LSAT to getting your transcripts to actually applying, is done through this website. And part of it, for example, is getting your letters of recommendation. And when you're requesting these LORs, you're waiting on people to submit them. And so sometimes that's a little bit of anxiety inducing. You also have to, request all your transcripts and things online. So there's no like going to the schools anymore. There's no request. Some people will be like, oh, but I have this transcript that my school mailed me. That's not good enough anymore. Everything has to go through the LSAC now. So it's definitely a very online-based process now.
So what is it that, okay, you're a paralegal, you're working, you plan to continue working while you go to law school and work and go part-time. You're a mom. So what is it for somebody in your position that you are looking for in a law school? And I'm going to throw this out there. Like, look, money is always a factor. So I'm going to take that answer away from you. Like, you want obviously, if Quinnipiac offered you more money than UConn, you're going to go to Quinnipiac, but in a way that's significant, that offsets the commute. But like, what is it that attracts you about a program? Because most law students, or a lot of law students that I've talked to, they're 23, 24 years old. They're basically out of college. They may not have a job or child. So like, what is it like? How do law schools appeal to the Carla Ochoas of the world?
There's really 2 components. One of them is flexibility. And I think that's a major one, especially when you have a family the way that I do. And flexibility can be in the form of, for example, WINIC has 2 days on campus and 2 days online. So that's very helpful. Places that have like online office hours versus in-person only. The options to have flexibility, to do more online, less in person, to save on that commute. And the more flexibility within like timeframes, and offering the same opportunities at night that they do during the day. This is something I hear from a lot of law students who go to places that have a part-time program where they say, all the good electives are only in the morning. And no one wants to hear that. Everyone wants the same opportunities. And so to have that and know that even though I go as a part-timer, I can have the same opportunities is huge. The other thing for someone like me, for example, it comes down to what they offer beyond the classroom. So a lot of like groups and clinics that they have, and some of them are, for example, Quinnipiac has this amazing clinic that works with refugees who are coming from Spanish-speaking countries, where they were victims of a lot of really horrible things. And that is empowering to me. That is literally up the alley where I want to go. So it's almost like, in order for the Carla Ochoas of the world that are focused on just being home with their families the most, it's about flexibility. And then for the other part of me that's really focused on doing work that's meaningful, it's having these opportunities, but having these opportunities at night as well as a part-time program student, not just during the day for those who go full-time.
I think it's, as I sort of try to advocate for a healthier legal profession. And I really think that if we talk meaningfully as a profession about a healthier profession, and really about inclusion and about giving Carla Ochoas of the world a voice at the table, like, this is where it starts. Like, it really starts with being able to provide meaningful opportunities, to not putting the electives all in the morning, or offering clinical experiences. Or if you're working at a firm, offering, saying, hey, you can reduce your time, go do the clinic one a day at the criminal courthouse, or go clerk for the judge, because these are the things. Because if you're going to take really non-traditional applicants and turn them into lawyers, and those lawyers ultimately become partners or firm leaders or judges or people who are actually making important decisions in the profession. You can't ever get there if you're not meeting the needs of you, Carla. I mean, frankly, because you're going to bring a completely different perspective as an immigrant, as somebody who speaks Spanish, as somebody who's gone to law school later in life, as somebody who's been a paralegal, as a mother, than somebody who, say, they're the fourth lawyer in their family. Their great-grandfather was a lawyer. And fine, like the law has plenty of people like that, but this is going to, it's really, I think, critically important. And, in our discussions, I know it's just exciting that there are law schools out there even offering like national hybrid programs. I spoke with Gretchen Nicolason, who's at Hamlin University or college out in Minnesota. She lives in Colorado. She goes there like 2 weeks a semester, and it's like intensive, and the rest is online. So I think that the more law schools can do that, the better people we can have as lawyers, because you're removing those barriers to entry, which is just so important. And it's awesome. It's really awesome to hear. It's a little bit. I mean, I think I applied to law school in 2001 to, I think I started in 2002. So we're talking like 20 plus years ago. What is the talk in the potential law student applicant community about law schools and about what that is like? What are people's thoughts on that?
So I think that the one thing is, we all know it's really hard. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Like a lot of the groups, so I'm part of some other Facebook groups, and a lot of them focus on how hard is it really to work during your first year of law school, and how can I pay for my life if I can't work? And so the thoughts about law school are a lot of them tied to money. How can I work or not work, and how can I afford my life and loans? So unfortunately, that conversation hasn't changed. It's still a burden financially to go to law school, and financial aid, it's very difficult to obtain. Having to get scores in order to qualify for scholarships. So the conversation is very money centered. The other thing that it's centered around, from what I see a lot, is how things have not changed in a long time. Apparently, professors still cold call. And people, again, about the fears, that's something they're like, oh, I have anxiety. Nowadays, we're a lot more upfront about our mental health, which I think is great. But one of those things, manifests in people also voicing that those things are scary because of, anxiety or some sort of issue that you might have. And I can totally relate to that, because I am terrified of being cold called. I am not looking forward to that in law school. So a lot of the conversation is about the fear and the actual cost of being an attorney. Unfortunately, that is what dominates the forums nowadays.
I mean, nothing has changed since I have gone. Law school always felt way too expensive and long. I'm a huge advocate for actually making law school 2 years. Like, I feel like that extra third year is the unnecessary cost kicker. It's like a tax that is just paid, and it's ridiculous. And I think the consequences are many. I strongly believe law school should be 2 years. And yeah, I mean, the cold calling method is, I mean, it's, I don't think you'll ever forget the first time that happens when you're a law student. It is definitely nerve-wracking. And I was talking with, somebody, and they said, well, in their law school, they go alphabetically. And in my law school, the professor just walks in and just says, Ryan, tell me about this, and ask you all these sorts of questions. And look, it is nerve-wracking. It is terrifying, and it's also interesting because it's sort of unlike law, where if you're going to argue something, like, you go and that you're arguing it, and you have time to prepare. Like, it's not a big surprise. But I also think it is stressful and it's all those things. But like, look, like you get through it. And there's also like, yeah, everybody probably has that person that they went to law school with who was not taking it very seriously, and you're like, oh my gosh, and they embarrass themselves essentially. But I think for the most part as well, like it is a chance. Your law students, your classmates are, I think, a very vital part of your career as a lawyer. And one of the things that you have as an opportunity, if you're out there, is to show your classmates that you're prepared, that you can be relied upon. And honestly, like in my law school section, like that is sort of how like I was able to build this business, which is that my classmates, like they knew I would be prepared. They knew I could handle it. They knew I could do these things. And that resulted in me getting critical business early on because my classmates would refer cases to me. So, I don't want to put more pressure on people out there, but it's ultimately an opportunity for you in different ways. Though, certainly I tell this, I was just telling this to Allison, like all growth lies just outside your comfort zone. And yes, like that will make you uncomfortable. If you're at all on the pulse, but same thing when you deal with a judge, like that can make me uncomfortable. It's just like, oh boy. But be prepared, be diligent, and your reputation as a law student and lawyer both matter. If judges know that you're prepared, like that's like 95% of the battle, where you're not getting up there and going, I don't know, this is not my case. Then you're selling yourself and your client short. So Carla, I think this has been a fantastic talk. I think anybody who's looking to go to law school is going to get a lot out of it, even if they get nothing else out of it than the Facebook groups and the prep courses to take. But your story is compelling. I can't wait to have you on. A little over a year from now, when you're through your first semester of law school, and then when you're a lawyer, you're going to be fantastic. You're going to do fantastic at all of it. And I look forward to cheering you on and supporting you in any which way I can. But before we get there, I have to ask one question that I ask to everybody on this podcast. We're at a cookout. What do you put on your burger? You could have a veggie burger, hamburger. I'm going hamburger. What condiments are you putting on your burger and why?
I feel like this is a trap because you should know this answer. So of course, besides cheese has to be on it. Otherwise, I can't eat that. I'm putting mayo on it. Probably a little bit of ketchup. So, you have that mayo ketchup sauce going. And then I'm doing lettuce and tomato. And if I had red onions.
I go mayo, ketchup, pickle. I can go onions, but I don't feel like lettuce belongs anywhere near a burger. Like it's just like, I'm not a rabbit. Like lettuce is like, lettuce needs to be, to me, it needs to be a salad. It needs to be with tomatoes and something crunchy, and it needs to be slathered in oil, like for me to and like it's an oil vessel.
Burgers, that extra crunch, and plus it makes you feel like you're having your veggies, it's a win-win.
Well, there's no wrong answer to what goes on a burger. But Carla, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate all you do for the firm. If you're out there listening, I think Carla's been vulnerable, honest, and given a lot of great advice. I think people out there are going to get a lot from it. So thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for joining Ryan McKeen in the Law Student Lounge, where real law students talk about their real lives. Are you a law student with a story to tell? Learn how you can share your story with us in the episode description. And join us next time in the Law Student Lounge.